So I really appreciate Nan McKay joining us today. She has been a friend of the show. We do a lot of things together, so I'm delighted to have her here. She's just written a brand new book, so that's what we're here talking about. Again, we're in meeting format today, and if you would please go ahead and put your questions in the chat box, I'd appreciate it as we go, and we'll try to incorporate them in the discussion, and then we'll open it up for questions a little later on as well. Quickly, for those of you who don't know, Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women who make 80% of all purchasing decisions would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we would do that in mass, and we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters, that we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And let's see here, Norma, I think I need you to mute your phone if you can here. There we go. Oops, I don't know what's happening. You're showing up on the screen, but that's all right. We've started these calls at the beginning of the pandemic. The content obviously is to try to help you guys connect with each other. We're bringing in national leaders like Nan to share their insights, and we want to connect you with each other. So thank you again, and here we go. Nan is the president of the board of directors of Nan McKay Associates, a corporation she founded in 1980, which now has 4,000 employees with offices in 10 cities. Nan is also the CEO and founder of Nan McKay Connects, a media and consulting company with podcasts and YouTube channels. She also does TrailBlazers Impact Interviews, and they feature ordinary women with extraordinary stories. And again, we're partnered with them, and she does also broadcast our recordings. Her book, Gold in the Golden Years, How to Launch a Business You Love to Make Your Own Gold, is focused on women over 50 who want to start and grow a business, including the Gold in the Golden Years series, along with a webinar and a course. She was selected as the 2019 California Women Business Owner of the Year, and she has 2 buildings named after her. I want to learn more about that. Please take a look at her podcast at TrailBlazersImpact.com. She's got some great content there. Okay, before we begin, for some reason the phone is showing up on my screen. I'm hoping that you show up, your face shows up here in a second, Nan. But before we begin, we want to learn about you. Please tell us a bit about your background and how you arrived at this place in your life and career.
Okay, well, let me know if there's anything I can do.
There, I see you. Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, if I think back on trying to give you the history, I would go, wow, yikes. That's a long discussion.
Yeah.
But basically, after working for government agencies in subsidized housing for 17 years, I decided at age 38 to become an entrepreneur. And I cashed out my big pension fund, my whopping $10,000 pension fund. I quit my job and I started Nan McKay Associates, just like that. Mm-hmm. I received, though, and followed some really good advice, because I kind of was like, what should I do with my life? You know, what do I want to do with a business? And someone told me, stay in the field that you're well known in, just do something different. But, oh, okay. Well, today, the advice we get is to identify our avatar. You know, that's our ideal customer, and construct a business focused on their pain point or a problem that they're having. That's what everybody's going to tell you. At that time, though, I'd never even heard of an avatar. I didn't know what an avatar was. But I knew people working in the subsidized housing field had to learn a new housing program. It was called the certificate program there, and it's now turned into the voucher program. And Congress and HUD had just created it. And I had been working it for about 5 years, and we had been selected as one of the 13 outstanding housing authorities in the country working that program. So I thought, I wonder if I could train HUD regulations. And that's what I did. Starting out from zero, basement of my house, thinking what else can I do? Now that's the business that has grown to 4,000 employees with 10 offices around the country.
Wow.
Now, because I traveled about 40 weeks a year for 30 years, 40 weeks a year, I had 12 weeks at home, usually 1 week a month. And because the industry leaders were retiring, with a new younger crop coming on board, when I was about, I don't know, in 65, maybe 66, something like that, not 1966, when I was. Then I decided to turn the running of the company over to my son, John. He'd been working in the company for about 10 years, and I moved to president of the board. And then I just really oversee operations from a high level. Mm-hmm. I still have been training the executive management class that I'd written, and I trained that for many years. And turning that company over to the board, to John, really turned out to be a great decision, because John has been extremely successful in growing the company. You know, they say some people are better at starting a company, some people are better at taking it and going on with it. And I think I was better at starting it, and I did it for, God, I don't know, 40 some years, but wow. John now has it. But then after semi-retiring, what you really want to do first is you want to do nothing. You just want to drink your coffee, sitting outside in your nightgown until 10 o'clock. And then you start volunteering. And I volunteered all over, and I played golf. And basically, I did nothing in my estimation. But I got to a point where I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I started a new company, and that company is called Nan McKay Connects. Well, I've interviewed about 400 people, and maybe more in that company. Over 200 of them really were women featured on my podcast and YouTube channels called TrailBlazers Impact Interviews. Mm-hmm. Well, now I'm taking the company to the next level, and I'm focusing on resources for entrepreneurs. I'm starting with this series called Gold in the Golden Years, which includes that book you talked about, mm-hmm. and that'll be coming out shortly, but also webinars and courses on it, because I thought if I can make HUD regulations sound simple, then I should be able to put together a blueprint for starting a business, because I've done 5 of them. So I figure 6 businesses altogether so far. Well, that's where I am right now.
Okay, perfect. So tell us why you wrote the book. What's your intention? What are you trying to do?
Well, after starting those 6 businesses, some wildly successful, like Nan McKay Associates, and others that were not. They cost me some money. I really wish that I had had some guidance along the way. You know, I did mine so much seat of my pants, you know, that we call it, just by gut reaction. Mm-hmm. And it was usually just trial and error. So I've been in those shoes of people that want to start a business. And I just want to save women some angst by helping them plan things out and maybe do a little more preparation in advance, so you don't end up like I did with some really successful and others that I thought, oh my God, why did I do this? I mean, I had one that I had to take out a loan on my house to be able to pay for the business. I mean, it was a disaster. So the good part is you learn from that. You know, you're not just doing it and then saying, well, what else can I do? And forgetting that you did it. But you learn, and that's what I've put into the book. What can you do to prepare? And the course.
Perfect. Oh gosh, yeah, that's just so needed. There's a drawing that I used to keep on my desk of the entrepreneurial journey, and it's jaggedly up and down, and up and down, and up and down. It'd be nice to kind of smooth that out. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. So what do you think is driving older women to go into entrepreneurship? Has the pandemic had anything to do with that? I know a lot of women are starting businesses right now.
Well, let me give you a little longer discussion of this. I've been all about women empowerment since my 20s, since I was in my 20s. And in fact, I really had a period where I was pretty militant about the subject, and that was in my 30s. In my last government agency position as executive director, you could count the number of women in that position on one hand. I mean, that were executive directors. So I started an organization called Women in Housing in Minnesota, because we had no voice singularly, and there weren't very many of us. When I started Nan McKay Associates in 1980, I couldn't even get a credit card in my own name. My husband, Jim, had to sign for me. And I know how hard it is to climb that ladder. And although there's more anti-discrimination laws today, the reality is that if you are a woman over 50 and you're in, let's say, the corporate environment, or sometimes even government, but more corporate, then businesses have ways to discriminate. And at 50, there's really two ways to discriminate, both age and gender. Of course, if you're Black or lesbian or disabled, there's more ways to discriminate. So I started saying to myself, it's time to say enough and to begin right now to start making your own gold. So for those women in the 50 to 65 group who are still working, my advice is plan now, not when you get your last paycheck. Be proactive, not reactive, because you won't believe how fast those years go by. You're never too old to start a business, but the time is now. And you realize that you really can't afford to wait. So my Gold in the Golden Years series gives a blueprint toward thinking about options, choosing a business, and then running that business. And I think the truth is that women are getting sick and tired of being relegated to second place. We've all heard the statistics. According to McKinsey, at the beginning of 2020, the representation of women in corporate America was trending, slowly, true, but trending in the right direction. Between January 2015 and December 2019, the number of women in senior vice president positions increased from 23 to 28%. Again, not much, but at least it was going up.
It's better, yeah.
And in the C-suite from 17 to 21%. Though the numbers were progressing slightly upward, true, women remained still dramatically underrepresented, and especially women of color. And then, so we're going in the right direction, but then, bam, along came what? What do we know? COVID.
Yeah.
And now it appears the slightly positive statistics are going backward as women leave the corporate world. And jobs are again going to men. In addition, women in their 50s, really, and early 60s who are still working are starting to question whether they should change and do something else. Career women who've been in charge at work, but maybe have fought ageism and sexism and are tired of doing all the work, but still fighting for equal pay, equal chance at the promotion, recognition for the work that they've done. And with that recognition and pay, we know that sometimes that pay went to the man that they propped up. And a lot of women are now saying, geez, is this all there is? I think in addition, traveling alone is perfectly acceptable now, whether it's a cruise or a tour or seeing the sights of Europe. And it takes extra money to do that. And women over 50 who now have more time, because most of them, their children are getting grown if they're not grown, and they have some of that money, and they want the freedom to spend it on themselves. And the reason I'm doing this and why it's older women is they're saying it's our time.
Yes. Well, we're of one mind. I mean, that's part of the reason why we started Purse Power. It's sort of like, okay, let's quit fighting the machine. What power do we have? And we've got economic power all over the place. So I'm not about trying to fight it within the system. It's useful sometimes to just take the reins, right?
Sometimes, okay. And you may have already had the reins at work, and you're in your career. So it isn't that hard to take it. You just have to take them for yourself. That's what you haven't been doing. If you're a career woman working, you haven't always taken those reins for yourself.
Very good. Very good. All right. So you talk about a SOAR launch plan. Can you tell me how that's different from a regular business plan or regular strategy plan?
Yeah, let's say that the SOAR launch plan really isn't a business plan. It's the whole process.
Okay.
So there's 4 steps in the SOAR launch plan for successful entrepreneurship. S stands for select your goals, define your interests, and choose a business. So I go through how to do all that, how to think this out, how to realize what you really want to do. And then once you say, yeah, I want to start a business, how do you decide what business to start? O is for organize your launch to be successful and filled with joy. So I talk about how to set up that business so that when you roll it out, it does exactly what you want it to do, and you don't have nearly as many problems because you have planned for it. A is for acquire customers with similar missions and visions. That's probably your hardest thing to do because today you're working so much with social media, you're working with the internet and the programs on the internet. So how do you get people to notice you and then buy from you? And you want your avatar person. You don't want just anybody. You want the people who really want you. Mm-hmm. And then the R stands for realize your destiny as you multiply your impact and income. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about taking care of yourself as well. Like Ellie and Jane know exactly what I'm talking about because I'm the worst at it. I have to constantly remind myself, breathe, number 1. Number 2, yeah, take all that, those good vitamins you've got and try to stay healthy and get your stress down, etc. But that's what that last chapter or the last module really is about. So for people like me who started their business, let's say on a wing and a prayer with a whole lot of determination, I think that the book and the course will provide a lot of ideas for closing some of the loopholes that may be maybe even impeding the growth of your own business that you already have. So I think you'll find the book helpful if you're starting a business, you haven't started business yet, but you're thinking about it, or you already have a business and you want to grow it.
Yeah, trying to grow it. Okay. So let's see here. I've got Joyce Coleman ask you a question. For a woman over 50 starting a business, is it better to do an LLC at the beginning of the business or do an Inc. or start off as an LLC and then transition to an Inc.?
First of all, I think it depends on the kind of business that you have. The C Corp and the S Corp are going to provide you with some of the best protection, let's say, but my opinion is start with an LLC. You don't know how big you want to grow. Maybe you want to just be small. And if you want to be small, and then as you say, if you think you need to go to another level, you can. Why an LLC? Because it does give you that protection similar to a C Corp or an S Corp or even a B Corp. And I explain all that in the book. But I think the LLC, that's what I have for Nan McKay Connects is the LLC. And I still will report all my income on my personal income tax form, but it gives me the protection of the face of the company legally.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So we were an LLC until we started having shareholders, and then we became an Inc. But I agree with you. I do my coaching business as an LLC. It's just simpler. Okay. You have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of women for your podcast. What are the top 3 insights that you gained from all of those interviews with highly successful people? Yeah.
Let me just focus on the entrepreneurs because that's what this group is mostly. And I have probably at least half of my people are entrepreneurs. I've really encountered quite a few, what I would call gutsy women.
Yeah.
Who they call them badass today, but I mean, it's the same thing, who have said, I can and I will. All of them have a kernel or 2 of advice that's really helpful, whether you are a wannabe entrepreneur or you've already jumped into the fray yourself. When I wrote the book and the course, Gold in the Golden Years, I incorporated their advice throughout with direct quotes from the interviews. So I printed out the interviews and I thought, somebody said something about this topic. What did they say? And so I went to the transcript, I found what they said, and throughout the book, I incorporate what they said. Case Lane is a great example because Case is one of the people that I quote a couple of times. Case is absolutely one of my best friends. But in addition to that, she has some great advice and her experience is fabulous. Well, why not share that with people? So that's what I did throughout the book and the course. And I think one of the most helpful pieces of advice that I got from people was to be sure you have enough money, whether from your current job or from savings, to get you by without counting on business revenue for at least 12 months.
Yeah.
I got that advice from quite a few people. Some said 6, and some said 12, and some said like a year and a half. But unlike me, who started it with $10,000, this is what made my business in the very beginning of Nan McKay Associates. Because another way to do this is do what happened to fall in my lap, really. And it's to obtain a contract, if you can, before you leave your job or shortly after you start your business. I was able to do just that. About a month after I left my job and started the business, HUD put out a request for proposal for training a new inspection protocol. Well, I was one of the 4 contractors selected. And that helped tremendously. You might say, how in the world did you get it when you were brand new like that? HUD did something they have never done before in their whole history. And they have not done it since. So I lucked out. That's why I said I fell into this, because they bid the contract on experience with the voucher program, the certificate program back then, and the HQS, or Housing Quality Standards protocol. So I actually had more actual experience in running the program than anybody. And so I got to be one of the 4 contractors selected. And that gave me an ongoing source of revenue quickly. And even though I was pretty well known in the housing industry at that point, because I was like on housing chairperson of NARO and president of the state of NARO and vice president of the region, all that stuff. But I think it introduced the housing industry to my style of training. And it was a challenge, because here I was at that point, a 38-year-old woman with blonde hair at that point, training all these older building inspectors, all guys. There wasn't a woman in the group, who had been inspecting units with their own standards, usually code, for about 4 years of the program. And here am I up there in front of the room going, da, 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 da. Well, they sat with their arms crossed in front of them, glaring at me. And I had 3 days to turn around. So let's just say I learned fast how to do it, how to make things really interesting. And remember, back then, we didn't have PowerPoint. We didn't even have transparencies. So I traveled with 10 pre-written big flip charts. And that's the way I did the training. And I drew little stick figures. I did all kinds of things, but I hooked them. I got them interested because I was excited about it. And I had to turn the tide. I had to turn it for HUD too, because HUD had an uphill battle with going from code to some, let's say, pretty loose standards in comparison.
So how can, I'd be interested in anything about your story there that these folks could use. I mean, in terms of getting government contracts, I think that's a really good piece of advice. I think you had a unique opportunity. Do you know anything about that in terms of them going after government contracts?
Well, yes, on government contracts, if you can get an 8A certification, boy, that's a great place to start. But government contracts, I would say that the way to do it is sub with somebody else, sub under a contractor who already has expertise and a track record in that area. Just breaking in like I did, it helped that I was well known, and that was a program that I had worked, and I knew the HUD people, so they knew what I knew. But what I hear people saying on my program when I interview them is, if you're still working, you do have an expertise and you do know people. And so if you can tell people, hey, I am going out with my own business. Now you've got to be careful, because if you've got a non-compete, you have to be really careful how you say it. But if you can find a niche and get that contract soon on, that has really helped a lot of people start a business. Let me tell you another thing that they've said. Many people have a business coach today. Even coaches have coaches. That's what I'm hearing. And many women, I find, have gone into the field of business coaching. I think the startup costs are much smaller when they can conduct their coaching online and just from their home. So that's something to think of. That's another thing people have said. Another one people have said is that an online lifestyle business, that really seems to predominate. You need to figure out now, if you're still working, even before you leave your corporate job, what you really want to do. And number two, how you're going to make it pay for itself. You may want to become what we call a lifestyle entrepreneur. I mean, the best example is Case Lane. Listen to her interview. She is the best at it. But the difference is that a lifestyle entrepreneur is not as focused on profits as a traditional entrepreneur, but they want to earn enough to cover their business expenses. Like, you may have like a 401k, and maybe you have your basic needs covered, but eventually you should be able to cover your business expenses and provide some extra money to do that traveling I talked about, and then go international business class and stay in the Marriotts and the Hyatts. So I'm talking about, do what you gave up for all those years, or you squeezed in between your work schedules, and do something like travel. Now, another thing to think about is that online businesses are really much less expensive to start than, let's say, signing for a lease on a building, because you can do most of the work out of your home office. And online business is something you can do wherever you are. That's why I said, listen to Case, because she knows how to do this. So if you're at a resort, let's say in Cabo, you remember that travel stuff, or you're on a cruise in Europe and you're sipping a pina colada, just think about yourself there. You can pick up your laptop computer and you just can put in a few hours. You don't have to go to a store. You don't have to take on that additional expense. So make your office at home where you can stop for an hour and take a walk or a run. You can go to the store if you need something. You can attend your granddaughter's school function. And what I'm talking about is, for God's sake, live your life. This is your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did the thing with business, going out on my own, when I had triplets at home. And I used to work till 3 a.m, but I could work whenever I wanted, and I could be there for my kids. So absolutely. All right. So talk about the trajectory of growth of your organization and some of the challenges you faced and how you overcame them. And then I'd be interested in learning about anything you wish you'd known at the beginning. And guys, please feel free and go ahead and add your questions to the chat box.
Well, I can think in mine, because of my particular situation, I'm thinking Nan McKay and Associates. I can think of a couple things that really helped. HUD secretaries and other top officials, you may know this, but they're reappointed with every change in the presidency. So what I would advise, if you're doing anything in government, is stay away from politics. because that's the only way that you can survive from one presidency to another.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are associated, especially looking at today, you're associated with the Democrats or you're associated with the Republicans. And that's not always the party in power. And you don't want to go in and out of your business. So stay away from politics.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is integrity. When there's pressure put on you, just stay the straight line and do what you know is the right thing to do. Anyone in the housing field, anyone that does government stuff will know exactly what I'm talking about. And you get pressure. From the mayor, move my mom to the top of the list. Can you? If you want your job, that's something you should be doing, is what's implied. Don't ever do it. Because if you take that first step, the second one will be right behind it. Third, you mustn't let your ego get in the way. So we always said to people, and we still do, we don't make the rules. That's the role of HUD and Congress. So don't act like you know it all. You know, that was important to us. We simply explain the rules, explain them. That's it. So we focused on helping agencies comply with the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the laws and the regulations are sometimes difficult to understand, but there's big penalties from audits when they're not followed. So that's something to think about. Now, so think about how that might relate to your business and maybe local government. Our business, I would say our biggest growth, when I think about it, came from when we began to manage big housing authorities, when they decided to privatize. The seminar business is kind of a onesie twosie. I mean, it's much harder to make money in that.
Mm-hmm.
But when we went to manage housing authorities, that's where really the bigger dollars are. So we now manage over 100,000 units of the housing voucher program. And we bring in our staff and we perform all the functions with the families and owners under a contract. So start small, get well known, whatever industry you're in, and then eventually you can grow to the bigger type of contract or bigger type of client or whatever it is you're working with. And I think that's important because it's getting known back here that is going to really help you step up the ladder. I think another big growth area for us was managing temporary housing programs. Like we manage the emergency housing assistance programs related to COVID. We manage them in a variety of states. We have Massachusetts, we have New York, we have New Jersey, we do a lot in Florida, we do some in Texas. So what happens is that our staff members fluctuate depending on the contracts we manage. Therefore, when you ask, how did we grow the business? It's really very specific to the business, but I think you can take some of the ideas or thoughts that I talked about and relate them to your own business, because I think there's lessons to be learned in all of it.
Okay.
Challenges. You asked me about challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think the biggest challenge, especially in a traditional business, is that when you're the one who's made the name for yourself as the business, the client only wants you to do the work. So easing them into other staff is really a challenge. And then because you're the one who can usually charge the highest fee for services, and because you're the one that ends up producing most of the revenue, you have the question and the problem on now who's going to do the management work, because you're doing all of the client work. So it takes quite a while before you can, let's say, afford to hire a manager. And if you don't set up systems with enough oversight, especially if you travel like I did, you may not get the level of competence that you need. And I will tell you from personal experience, they can run the business into the ground before you know it. I could tell you a long story on this. I'm not going to, but I'll tell you it can be bad. And that happened to me, and it almost took the business down.
Wow. Wow, you're right. That's having processes in place, having other people be able to follow them. The other thing I've heard is that you've got to have that in place if you want to sell the business. You've got to have that infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Case is saying, great as always, Nan. What are the 1 or 2 key issues that may be a challenge that women over 50 should be aware of when starting their business? So you kind of got at some of those, but any more?
I think self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got there because you had expertise and knowledge into the business world. You acquired all that. But when you go out by yourself, you don't have that same level of identification. And so you're creating a new identification. And I think you just have to keep saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I think another thing, and especially if you've been subjected to ageism and genderism in the bigger company, in the more corporate field, then you kind of have that mantle of, well, am I really old? Am I too old to do this? Am I going to be okay? All those things I think go through your head, and a lot of it is just self-confidence. I think the second thing is that once you've reached that pinnacle and you are, higher up, where you're executive director, or you are, a corporate manager, or you're vice president, or you're something like that. I think the other thing is you have had somebody else to do all this stuff now for you.
It's on you.
Now you get to this level where, you're older and you've got all this expertise and experience, but now you're having to learn all these social media programs, and you're having to learn all these little tips and tricks that help you get where you need to be. And you're doing all this stuff. You're sweeping the floor. You're doing all these things that you didn't have to do before. So it's a learning experience. And I'll tell you, the financial and the bookkeeping is one of the things that is, to me, the most hardest. So here's my advice in those areas. Find out what you're not good at, and don't try to, for me, it was financial. Sure, I can read a financial statement. I did that. But I'm talking about the onesie doozy. I got to account for my expenses and get those somehow logged into a program and do accounting. And I was like, oh my God. So I thought, all right, I'll learn QuickBooks and I'll do all that. Started focusing on that. And I thought, this is not my forte.
Not my thing. Yep.
I'm in trouble. So bottom line is, hire somebody to do the things that you're not good at, so that you can focus on the things you are good at. And another thing I would say, I could go on and on this forever, but another thing I'd say is use Fiverr and Upwork and some of these places where you can get this temporary staff.
Amen.
Don't hire staff unless you absolutely have to, because once they reach payout of $600, now you got to do a W-9. And then you start getting into, do you have to pay benefits? And then you start into government reporting. Stay away from employees in the beginning if you can do it.
Oh, absolutely. And Fiverr's great. I mean, they're great, guys. Like I've got a gal right now working on a list in Pakistan, and I have to pay very little, and she can go ahead and do the work for me. It's amazing. All right, let's see here. Okay, so Nan, asking a question. Let's see here. Ellen is saying, is the oversight you speak of with new employees based on more personal/virtual interaction with them, or with the platforms you've used? And if the latter, give some examples.
Well, if we're talking about Nan McKay Associates oversight at a high level, I don't get involved at all with employees. From the point of view that once you turn it over to somebody as CEO, you've got to step away, and you can't be mucking in their area. I have done it a couple of times, and I have ventured over there, and John has had to sit me down and say, "Now, Mom, you know very well this just isn't going to work," and talks about it. And then I go, "Oh God, you're right."
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I'll stay out of it. Now, getting back to Ellie, I'm trying to think about exactly what you were getting at with this, because I don't think Nan McKay Associates and the oversight at the high level is applicable to, unless you have a CEO. What I said is not applicable. But if you are, let's say, executive director, or you're president, or you're something where you are CEO, then, and you have supervisors beneath you, then yes, oversight is more applicable, because you don't want to go around your supervisor to start telling your employees that they supervise what to do, or A, it's confusing, B, is you will undermine your supervisor. So when I say at a high level, it has to be caveated that way. If I am the CEO, and especially if I am the CEO, founder and CEO, I see this of the small business, like me all the time, Nan McKay Connects. My employees are people that I've had working for me for a couple of years, but they live in Jamaica, or I have another one that is in Africa through Fiverr. I have another one that is in the United States, but he's through Upwork. So then I don't have to worry about the taxes and those kinds of things. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm not trying to avoid supervising, because people have to be very clear about what is it that they need to do and the direction that they're getting. But it doesn't mean that, so you can't go too high if they're your direct employees. But it does mean that you have to look at your structure and your situation, and it will apply directly to that structure.
Okay, guys, we've got about 10 more minutes on the broadcast today. So we've got one more question from Deborah, and then I'm going to open it up and have you guys on camera if you don't mind. So, Nan, what's your best advice for preparing for media interviews and navigating them with confidence, whether a podcast, radio, or television program? You're so articulate and seem completely at ease. How do you relax and remember everything you want to say?
Well, I will really tell you my secrets.
Please.
And there are definitely secrets. First of all, you're right. It's very hard to concentrate on whether it's your questions or like this, what you're going to say. Mm-hmm. So the way I do it is I set up 2 screens. And because most of the time you're doing this over Zoom, and I'll tell you if you do it in person, a little different way. But when you set up 2 screens, you have one in front of you here this is Zoom down here. I don't have to worry about looking at the rest of the people, looking at myself. I don't have to worry about that. I am who I am, and it's going to show up however it is. But what I say is the key to it. So I have a second screen behind my screen that's up a little higher, and I have a camera, a Logitech camera on top of that screen. Mm-hmm. And I have the print with my notes on it on that screen, so that I can see it. I can look at the camera. I can pretty much see what I've got because I scroll down as I do it. And I can see what's coming up next. I know the question Donna's going to ask me, and I know, because I've thought it out, what the notes are that I'm going to have to try to remember. I mean, I figure I'm probably older than every single person in this audience. So if I had to remember all this stuff, forget it. Now, same thing in person, in the sense that when I gave seminars, I would do a 5-day seminar, 5 days, all by myself. No one else. So how do you remember all this stuff? Well, if you've got your workbook, that's helpful, but you can't be looking down all the time. You've got to make contact with that audience. You've got to bring that audience into you. And the only way you can do it, that I could do it, to remember all this stuff for 5 days, and it's government regulations. I can't be wrong. I cannot say one wrong thing that entire 5 days, or I'll get in trouble with HUD. So I did it through PowerPoints. So I have PowerPoints on my screen here in front of me, and PowerPoints behind me that people can see. So they can see me, but they can also track with me on the PowerPoints, because people are normal. They'll kind of go off over here and then not think about something else that maybe I've said that they can relate to back home, and they come back and they think to themselves, oh, where was she? And boom, they can watch, they know where I am on the PowerPoint. Plus, We give them a workbook so they don't have to take notes, and only take a few little notes if they want to. So those really are my primary secrets. They give you the confidence that you need to get out there and do it. Otherwise, my age, I could never remember all that stuff.
Well, there you go. There you go. All right, everybody, go ahead and take your mute off and put your cameras on. Let's get everybody on the screen. And while they're doing that, I want to ask you that your top 3 learnings and top 3 actions. Okay, actually, everybody's coming back on time here. All right. Anybody have any more questions that they want to ask Nan before we close up the broadcast? Did you get your questions answered?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me go to the top 3 things then.
Okay.
That I would like to do. One is make a plan for yourself. Wherever you are in life, make a plan for yourself. The golden years, let's say, if you call them that, are coming up fast for some of you. And for some of you, perhaps those golden years are already here.
They're here.
So if you're in that next category, you're over 65 and you're tired of just having that cup of coffee and you might got until 10, which is what you look forward to for years, and you volunteered, you've socialized, and you're tired and you want some action, and you want us to make a difference, then start it. Take that first step. Take that first step. Number 2, I wish you'd sign up for our website, and there's a reason. I want to be able to give you the opportunity of discovery that you can give yourself. And I am putting more and more things on that website that are resources. I'm going to have a whole big thing on resources. Plus, then you'll sign up, you'll get our newsletter, and you can find out what's happening and get into it fast yourself. 3 is realize your potential to monetize your skills. This is your time. Go for it. If you have to get out of your own way to do it, then go. That's what I would say.
Yeah, just stepping out there is the hardest part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Please put your contact information in the chat so people can just pull it off if you don't mind, Nan.
All right, let's see if I can do this.
Okay, I started to do it. I thought, I hope I get it right. So let me just go ahead and do that. All right, Nan, you have been amazing today. You've been terrific. I appreciate you being here, and you share so much. And guys, please do go to TrailBlazers Impact. She's got amazing speakers. Talk about learning things. You can learn from people who have come before you, have experienced all kinds of things. And again, she has a lot of our guests on her podcast. So I hope you do go to TrailBlazers Impact.
And can I add one thing?
Sure.
February 9th, I'm doing a free webinar on just some key kernels on starting your business. So if you can go to my website, sign up. We always put that on the newsletter on how to get there. But I'd love to have you as part of my tribe. I love company.
There we go. There we go. We've got similar tribes. That's why we're working together. Okay, let's see here. So I just thank you again. I deeply appreciate it. I wanted to tell everybody about our upcoming guests. We've got some amazing programs coming, guys. Okay, so let's see here. On the 28th, we've got our networking session. This is a great place for you to meet other people across the country. Folks are getting to know each other. They're talking about their business goals. They're finding partners. They're finding customers. It's a great place for you to be. And I would love for you to ask your friends to join you, other business owners and business leaders. On February 4th, I have Captain Michael Abrashoff coming, and I have paid a lot of money to have him come into Prayer Companies. He wrote the book called It's Your Ship, Management Techniques from the Best Damn Ship in the Navy. And he took the worst performing ship in the Navy and made it the best performing ship in the Navy. And he couldn't hire anybody, couldn't fire anybody, couldn't pay anybody any more money. He did it by engaging the hearts and minds of his employees. And right now, in this time of the transition with COVID, that's what we've got. That's what we've got to be able to do. So he's going to be terrific. And I hope you come to that. On February 11th, I have Sandra James, the CEO of Private Eyes. She has got a background check firm and she's been highly successful, so she'll be on board. And then another great speaker, I've got Liz Sarah coming. She is the president of SOAR, the SOAR Foundation. SOAR provides advisors, retired executives that can help you as a business owner. And they can help you in lots of different ways. So you need to look up SOAR and take advantage of that. I'm going to have her come on. And prior to this role, she was actually the chairman of the board of the National Women's Business Council, one of the top women business organizations in the country out of Washington, D.C. So she's coming on the 18th, and then we'll do another networking session at the end of February. So we've got a good month planned here. Please go to our website, pursepower.com. We list every Friday's broadcasts on Monday. You can always register on Monday, and that's at pursepower.com. Please do use our directory to find and buy from women-owned and women-led companies. We'd love it if you would like and share our social media pages. We want to really grow the audience, and let your friends know about this broadcast every Friday at 10 Central. Okay, Nan, is there anything else that you want to add?
Just my email. It's nan@nanmckayconnects.com. And then again, the website is TrailBlazers, plural, impact.com.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Please remember, Purse Power, we have it. Let's use it. See you next Friday.